Last week, I started the podcast with a little story about how I struggled with time management and would laugh at my future self just thinking about how I was going to fulfill obligations that I was signing up for in the present. College is an interesting time for so many of us who seek out higher education. We get exposed to so much more than we did growing up, so many things that we didn't even know existed. Among these things could be, potentially, it was for me, philosophy. One of the philosophical topics that I wrestled with was the problem of evil. In school, I started interacting with people who weren't necessarily from my same faith background. I also interacted with people who didn't have any associated organized religion whatsoever. I would walk into a computer lab with a group of friends and it would look like the start of a bad joke. A Catholic, a Protestant, a Muslim, and an atheist walk into a computer lab. And well, you can fill in the blanks for how many very interesting conversations we had as the group we were. While not necessarily from that particular friend group, I did get confronted with the problem of evil at some point. The problem of evil often comes up as a topic when individuals of faith are confronted with a horrible life tragedy. One of my childhood friends died in a car accident, and it was something that I didn't know how to fully emotionally process. It was one of the moments when I remember grieving the most in my college career. And it was probably one of the first times I philosophically contemplated the problem of evil. If you're not familiar, the problem of evil is saying that God is good and the epitome of good. So, why would God allow tragedy to happen on earth? Why would evil exist if God is all good? And the resolution of this philosophical quandary, I can't take credit for it. It's one that's existed for years and years and years before my time, before podcasts even existed. I'd like to give a shout out to Trent Horn in the Council of Trent podcast. I like to lean into Trent's content as a way that I can grow philosophically and theologically. He does an excellent job when it comes to Catholic apologetics, and he does a stellar job covering the problem of evil. Philosophically speaking, let's just assume that free will exists and that free will is a gift that is given to us. If free will exists and if God exists, then we have to presume that we are given an option to choose God or not choose God. If we have an option where we don't choose God, well, that means that option has to be the absence of God. And if God is all good, then the absence of God must have a void that is filled in with the opposite, filled in with evil. Another way to think of the problem of evil is that, well, I want one side of a coin. Let's say you want the head side of a coin, but the coin itself can't exist without tails also being on the coin. Good cannot exist without evil, and we cannot have free choice under free will if there isn't both good and evil in the world. But what is good and what is not good was not always clear. There's a sea of gray area for an awful lot of topics and an awful lot of decisions. It's not always black and white. It's not always cut and dry. It's not always heads and tails. It's not always a perfect dichotomy. And you're not always given just two choices. Here's one that's obviously good, and here's one that's obviously bad. If that were the case, life would be an awful lot easier. Unclear gray areas are especially true when it comes to investing. If you are out there trying to invest and you want to invest in an ethical manner and you want to invest in companies that align themselves with your values, with your virtues, with your filter for what is good in the world, well, then you run into a problem. With any company, you're going to run into problems. You're going to run into issues. You're going to run into decisions that the company makes that do not align with your own. They ultimately are going to be indirectly cooperating with something you disagree with. They may employ individuals who firmly disagree with you. They may be paying those individuals a paycheck, and those individuals may be advocates. They may be going out into the world for things that you firmly disagree with. This leaves all investors in a predicament where they may be left with the decision between investing and not investing at all. The quest to avoid indirectly cooperating with evil is a slippery slope and one that I will cover in a future episode. But for now, I want you to keep the problem of evil in mind as we work toward today's main topic. Keep in mind that there is an opposite to any decision when we have free will. And when we have the option to choose what's best for us, what's best for those whom we love, and what's best for the world, we need to know that when it comes to personal finance, we're going to have decisions that are good and ones that are lacking good.